All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we are setting aside all that generic, run-of-the-mill personal finance advice. We're stripping away all the emotional storytelling and guilt trips around money. Instead, we're going to completely deconstruct the systemic mechanics of how capital actually functions within the US financial system. Think of this as an expert-level breakdown. Because listen, if you really want to understand the mathematical divide between wealth creation and wealth destruction, you absolutely have to understand the underlying mechanisms of debt. It's the foundation of everything we're about to cover. So let's dive right into a paradox that honestly confuses almost everyone. Think about this. If debt is supposed to be so incredibly terrible, why do the wealthiest individuals and the biggest corporations carry the absolute most of it? I mean, for decades, we've all been handed this binary, moral framework, right? The one dictating that all debt is basically a financial sin, something to be avoided at all costs. But expert analysis reveals that this assumption is fundamentally structurally flawed. To understand how the top tier operates, we literally have to shatter that bias right now. We need to look at debt through a purely objective, highly analytical, and mathematical lens.
Well, the crucial first step here is redefining what debt actually is. Mathematically speaking, debt is simply the leverage of future capital for present utility. That's it. It is a completely neutral tool. Think of it like a hammer, okay? A hammer can be used to build a beautiful house, or it can be used to shatter a window. Its value is determined entirely by the intent and the skill of the person holding it. Debt operates the exact same way. Its financial classification as good or bad doesn't inherently exist. It depends entirely on how you deploy that leveraged capital into the market.
Because of that, every single financial decision you make involving leverage has to pass through a strict mathematical filter. It's a pretty simple equation when you break it down. On one side of the spectrum, you have the mechanism of wealth creation. If the cash flow and the appreciation of an acquired asset outpace the interest cost of your debt, boom, you generate wealth. But on the flip side, we have wealth destruction. If the asset depreciates in value while you pile compounding interest right on top of it, you're just accelerating your own impoverishment. It is a non-negotiable mathematical spread. There is no middle ground here. Let's look at the absolute extreme end of wealth destruction to really put this into perspective. 300%. According to financial reports, this is the jarring annual percentage rate frequently associated with payday loans. It's the ultimate trap, right? It's compounding interest applied to pure consumption. When you leverage future capital at a massive 300% negative spread just to survive your present day-to-day, you aren't just borrowing a little money, you are mathematically guaranteeing future insolvency. It's a vicious cycle perfectly designed to extract wealth from you. Definitely not build it.
Now, that extreme example scales down to the broader, everyday mechanisms of bad debt that we see all the time. Bad debt is almost always uncollateralized borrowing used for discretionary consumption. Think about putting a luxury vacation or a designer watch on a credit card at, say, 20% interest. When you finance a non-essential experience like that, your financial return on investment is exactly zero, nothing. But the interest keeps compounding. And if you're only making the minimum payments, that one-time thrill exponentially multiplies in cost. You are literally claiming your future labor just to pay for past consumption. But what about necessities? Things you actually need. This brings us to a really interesting contextual gray area of neutral debt. Let's contrast a $70,000 loan for a luxury sports car with a $10,000 loan for a reliable used sedan. Now, both of these are depreciating assets. However, transportation is often a necessary economic function. You need it to get to work and earn an income. So the analytical objective here is to manage the necessity while minimizing that depreciation curve. The smaller loan achieves the utility with minimal wealth erosion, while the luxury loan over-leverages your capital, actively turning a basic necessity into active wealth destruction. To really drive that point home, unintended, consider the implicit assumption built right into the auto market. Vehicles lose approximately 10% of their value the absolute second the tires hit the public street. Therefore, financing a luxury vehicle is mathematically flawed unless that specific vehicle directly generates an external return on investment. Like, for example, if it's used for high-end business marketing that yields verifiable, contract-based revenue. If it's not doing that, actually scratch that. If it's not generating revenue, you are literally paying interest on an asset that is evaporating in value in real time.
Okay, let's pivot away from the destruction side of things and examine the actual engine used by the wealthy: good debt. Analytically speaking, this is defined as capital leverage specifically to acquire yield-producing or appreciating assets. In this model, the debt isn't some heavy burden. It's a powerful investment vehicle. It's a calculated strategic move. You deliberately assume the cost of borrowing because the projected return from your newly acquired asset is going to significantly and reliably outpace the interest rate you're paying. So how is this implemented systemically? Well, strategic leverage looks like taking on student loans, but strictly for education that yields a verifiable mathematical increase in your income potential. Think of an engineering degree that permanently bumps your baseline salary by 40 grand a year. Or consider business loans. An entrepreneur borrows $50,000 to scale their operations, and that directly results in $150,000 in new annual revenue. The debt funds a venture that creates a massive, positive spread between the new yield and the cost of the interest. It's leverage at its finest. Now, the most common and accessible wealth creation mechanism in the US is definitely real estate leverage. Let's deconstruct the math here because it's fascinating. Say you purchase a $500,000 asset, but you don't use 500 grand of your own liquidity. No way. You put down a fractional payment of $100,000 and you finance the remaining $400,000. Now, if that asset appreciates by $200,000 over a decade, you capture 100% of that appreciation despite only providing 20% of the initial capital. When you measure that against your $100,000 down payment, that is a 200% return on your original capital. That right there is the absolute multiplier effect of good debt. To truly master this whole concept, we have to look through a macro-systemic lens and ask a big question. Why does this work so incredibly well? Well, as expert reports note, the US financial system is fundamentally designed from the ground up to encourage lending and investing. The rules of the game are quite literally written to reward those who deploy capital and leverage debt, while actively, systematically penalizing those who just passively hoard cash. To understand exactly why, we have to look at the underlying plumbing of the economy itself. And that plumbing? It's rooted in fractional reserve banking. This is the true engine of modern economic growth. See, banks only hold a very small fraction of deposited funds in reserve. They lend the vast majority of it out. This mechanism literally multiplies the money supply in the broader economy. It's like a giant multiplier effect. And what happens when an expanding money supply chases the exact same amount of goods and services? It drives systemic, continuous inflation. It's baked right into the cake. Which leads to a pretty non-obvious yet absolutely critical realization: avoiding debt completely means leaving your cash idle to be actively eroded by inflation. This system implicitly and intentionally penalizes liquidity. If you keep all your wealth just sitting in cash out of some psychological fear of debt, your purchasing power is slowly bleeding out every single day. The financial ecosystem essentially forces you to strategically leverage assets just to outpace this invisible tax of inflation. And this brings us to the most advanced application of these mechanics. This is a real game changer. The wealthiest individuals, they do not fear debt. What they fear are taxable events. They understand that the tax code, much like the banking system we just talked about, has built-in incentives for leverage and heavy penalties for generating ordinary income. This is exactly where we see the deployment of advanced arbitrage and practically impenetrable tax shield strategies. The crown jewel of this approach is what experts call the advanced arbitrage cycle. You might have heard it referred to in financial circles as the buy, borrow, die strategy. Here's how it flows. You acquire assets, you let them compound over time, and then instead of selling them and triggering massive capital gains taxes, you simply borrow against them. Why? Because under the US tax code, loan proceeds are classified as debt liabilities, not income. This makes borrowing against your own assets a completely tax-free liquidity event. You get the usable cash, you get to keep the compounding asset, and you legally pay zero tax. It's brilliant.
Let's actually look at the mathematical proof of this arbitrage just to show you the scale of it. Imagine you have $1 million in stock appreciating at 10%, generating $100,000 annually in paper wealth. You borrow $700,000 tax-free against that stock and immediately reinvest it into real estate. That real estate generates $70,000 in cash flow and another $42,000 in appreciation. Meanwhile, your debt servicing cost to the bank is $50,000. Netting this all out, so the stock appreciation plus the real estate yield minus the cost of the debt results in a net annual wealth gain of $162,000. You literally use the bank's money to create a massive, tax-shielded wealth engine for yourself.
So the big question is, how do you actually deploy this? You need an actionable, objective framework completely devoid of emotion. First off, constantly evaluate the spread between your projected return on investment and the interest rate. You have to scrutinize the total cost over the entire repayment schedule. Absolutely, under no circumstances, use debt for consumption. Ensure you have verifiable, stress-tested means for servicing the debt before taking it on. And finally, treat credit exactly as the wealthy do. Treat it as a delayed settlement tool to optimize your liquidity, not as free capital to fund a lifestyle. We've deconstructed the whole shebang today. The mechanics, the systemic incentives, and the hard mathematical reality of leverage in the US economy. Debt is not a moral failing. It is a clinical financial instrument. When it's mismanaged, it practically guarantees poverty. But when mastered, it unlocks exponential tax-free wealth. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to analyze your own portfolio. Are you avoiding debt at the cost of your own financial growth? Take a hard look at the numbers. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing and keep learning.